On this episode of ArchiTech, we tackle acoustics with Steve Haas from SH Acoustics and Shay Murdoch of Murdoch Salone, looking at how the acoustics of your space can impact your employees and your health. All that and more. Next on ArchiTech.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ArchiTech, episode 10, recorded Thursday, May 7th, 2020. Sound design.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment.
This is ArchiTech, the monthly look at how the architecture and the AV space come together. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. This month, we're going to take a look at something that I've been wanting to do for a while and something that I personally think doesn't get a whole lot of attention, at least in the AV world. It does in the architecture world, and it does in a couple of different areas. We're going to talk about sound, honestly, and soundproofing and the acoustics of the space that you're in. With me is, first and foremost, Mr. Steve Haas from SH. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you, Tim.
And if you missed it at ISE, Steve and I got the chance to see each other in real life. I know that seems like 100 years ago, but it wasn't. It was just back in February. So you can check that out as well. With me is Shay Murdoch. Shay is from Murdoch and Salone. Welcome, sir.
Hi, thank you very much.
So guys, I want to start with Steve. We'll start with you on this. You and I talked back in February at ISE about the acoustics of rooms, right? And I'm sitting in newer studios for us here at AVNation. Steve and I actually talked offline about ways to make this room better. One of the things the reasons we moved offices was to expand our spaces and talking about, soundproofing audio studios and this, that, and the other. But you and I really talked about more than that. It was also the workplaces. What about acoustics makes it vital to a building or a facility's design?
Well, certainly from my perspective, our perspective as sound experts, we see how bad sound or good sound can affect productivity in the workplace. If we're talking about that sector, it's really all about the functionality of wherever you're trying to get your work done, trying to have better living conditions, performance or entertainment. It's really thinking about what is the right acoustic environment for that particular function. And that's a lot of times the problems come when somebody, whether it's the architects, designers, or even the clients themselves, are not thinking about that functionality enough relative to sound. So that's really where it starts, is how's good sound going to improve, and how's bad sound going to detract from the functionality of that space?
So how, you walk me through this, if I have never even considered the acoustics and considered the sound and how it impacts my employees, how would you say it does it, let's say it in a positive way?
Well, positive way is when you have the right separation of sound. You're not hearing other people talking when you're on a phone, maybe in your private office or certainly in a conference room. Speech privacy is a really big thing in a lot of corporate offices if we're still staying in that sector. And that's something that we often get brought in after the fact because somebody didn't address that. Maybe they're using glass walls that are very thin with glass doors and no seals. So you're looking at spaces that really have very poor speech privacy. So when it's done properly, when the room is not full of noise, it's not full of leakage of sound to and from a critical space, a private space, you really get the best of all worlds for the people who are using those spaces, the individuals and the groups that are talking, because they're not worried about what they say being leaked to other parts of the office.
Shay, I want to bring you in on this. When you start talking with clients, at what point, besides, obviously from an architecture standpoint, what's the function of the room? What are some of the aesthetics? What are you looking for? At what point do you guys start talking about the sound of a room or the liveliness or lack thereof of a space?
Well, I would agree with Steve in that it depends on the type of room that we're talking about. And it is it's an afterthought for a lot of clients. It's not something at the forefront. So we're trying to bring that to their attention early on. I find myself being brought in on projects to solve problems that existed because they were not thought about at the onset.
Okay.
Echoey conference rooms, the need to come in with things like white noise machines, which if the space were designed correctly to begin with, they wouldn't be necessary. So we're looking at what type of activities happening. If we're talking about a commercial office space, for example, the open work plan has been pushed as the model for years, but it has the drawback of being everybody's in an open space. So what steps can be done to mediate some of that noise, between people and to create a more comfortable noise sound level within the space.
It's actually going to be very interesting to see once we come out of COVID-19 social distancing, how those open plan offices are going to change. Because I've been reading a lot about that and thinking a lot about it.
Well, yeah, and Shay, you said you guys don't get brought in until after the fact sometimes on that. At that point, is it where you're not necessarily, I don't want to say putting a Band-Aid on it because that kind of takes away from what you guys do, but is it where you're kind of constrained with the existing infrastructure and so you're limited to what you can do short of ripping everything out and starting over again?
Sometimes it's a Band-Aid, yes. I mean, that's why when we're starting out projects now, like we recently did a 80,000 square foot school for K through 5th grade, so elementary school. And it was very important to bring in an acoustical consultant for the sound quality in the room with kids, as well as transference to the hallway, outside noise. So we're combining sort of how to isolate the room and then diffuse some of the sound within the room so that the students can hear the teachers, and then they're not, and then they're able to, hear each other and teach.
Yeah, absolutely. You both
we try to make those architectural elements within the room as opposed to Band-Aids. So, for example, we may do a ceiling treatment that is designed to diffuse sound, but also create an aesthetically pleasing environment, and not just a Band-Aid, and not, putting in acoustical 2x2 tiles.
Yeah, and making those part of the part of the room, right? Not
Part
just
of the room, part of the concept of the room. And we work in a visual way, so it's sometimes hard to describe those things. And they're very subjective. I mean, architecture itself is subjective, but it's subjective in a way that's a visual thing, and people have trouble understanding the subjective nature of sound. Meaning what makes them, what is it about the sound that is making them uncomfortable? Or, I think of loud restaurants, or, where something like Grand Central Station, which can be very loud, has a different emotional feeling because of the space it's in, even though it may have a high level of noise.
Yeah, high SPL there, and that is also. Some of that is, I hear locally, we've got a restaurant that opened up, not too long ago, and they quickly had to call an AV friend of mine to get an acoustician in there because you have parallel facing walls, all four, right? Hard surfaces on the ceiling, and suddenly, folks not only were stopped coming, but were complaining about the noise, and it wasn't, that necessarily. The loud for the number of people, but it was the fact that everybody cobbled together started adding to the overall SPL.
Right, and I'm sure Steve can say that there's a point where if you go too far with that, then it feels empty.
Mm.
So They're trying to balance a
Yeah.
livelihood of the space, a liveliness of the sound, with not being so loud that you can't hear. You're yelling over the person next to you. You're hearing every conversation around you. So, I mean, that's
Right.
hospitality design. It's a little different than a school or a commercial or spaces which are specifically designed for sound quality and isolation, like music studios or recording studios.
Well, Steve, talk about that for a second, because as somebody who did go into this place, I almost wanted to say, you know what, just make it dead. Just deaden it. Is there such a thing as too quiet when it comes to, public spaces?
I believe that any extreme can be problematic. Okay, because it still goes back to that functionality argument. Okay, a restaurant, while many of them are definitely built without any acoustic control in mind, I like to use the word taming a space, not killing it. Okay, and we want to control it. We want to tame it enough so that excessive liveness, that excessive loudness of sound, that you are screaming at the person across the table 3 feet away from you just to be heard, is not an issue. But if you go too far, if you swing that needle too far, you're absolutely right. It will feel oppressive. I mean, some restaurants like that. Some, maybe old Italian restaurant wants to feel just like everybody hush, hush, be quiet. But most restaurants, they want a balance. Okay. And the problem with some restaurant owners, which is not really the topic here, is that they will just say, oh, well, we want it loud and lively just so that they can avoid paying for what needs to be done properly. And they've even told us that. But the thing is, what they have to be educated on, just like any owner, head of a school, the CEO of a corporation, they have to understand that what they're buying is quality. They're buying an improvement that's right for their functionality, not too far one way or another. And that's what we need architects and people like us to be able to come together and say, this is where the needle should swing, in neither direction too far. And that's what we'll get. We'll get taming, we'll get control of a space, but not kill it, not kill the life.
Yeah. Both of you have been involved in some award-winning projects, both from the commercial side and the residential. Shay, I want you to walk me through this, and then Steve will get you on this. What is the difference? Walk me through the differences in design from a sound standpoint in the residential, and then what are the different, from residential to commercial? What are the differences there?
The differences in terms of between residential and commercial, or in the range of residential?
Yeah, in between residential, commercial, and you can even throw the light commercial in there as well, obviously, because that would be in that spectrum there.
Well, it goes to function, as Steve said. I mean, a residence has certain requirements where, you want to isolate a lot of the mechanicals from the space. You want to limit the amount of, velocity of air that you hear from the air conditioner, or the pipes that when plumbing is running, when toilets are flushed, so you're isolating rooms both, and depending on where it is in the environment. If it's a house, a high-end house in the woods versus a townhouse on Park Avenue, you're going to take a different approach to outside noise and the isolation from the exterior. So, we sit with the clients, we establish those programs for their needs, and then we design with Steve an appropriate solution to what level of isolation, both within the residence and from the outside, that they're looking to achieve. A similar thing applies to commercial, except for you're dealing with, perhaps many people in a room, right? I mean, we do a lot of art galleries. So art galleries have an inherent acoustical issue in that they are all hard surfaces. They're large spaces that sometimes have hundreds of people in there. And that is one of the hardest challenges in commercial work, is to create a space that you don't see the acoustical treatments, but they are there. And that's that's one of the things that we work with Steve on, is are there ways to provide absorption and deflection without it becoming part of the architecture? Can it disappear in the architecture and serve its same purpose, and serve the purpose of creating quality sound within those spaces?
Yeah. Steve, can it happen? Can you make the sound treatment disappear?
Certainly not just can it happen, it must happen in most cases. Okay. There are, for every 100 projects, 100 spaces, maybe even 1,000 spaces, there's probably one or two where somebody says, oh yes, let me see those acoustic treatments. Let it look like a science project to us. And certainly, even if the end users are saying it, by the time the architects and the interior designers get to it, it's not happening. I mean, it's so rare. And so that's kind of our life's blood mission here, to get something that is a true blend. And then when you're talking about the technology as well, that AV technology, I know, is a third wheel or third leg of the stool here that really has to blend in with both the acoustics, the way the speakers are integrated, such, and of course with the architecture. So that's really the essence of what always must be done to get a very successful project from everybody's standpoint. But I want to go back to just follow up on what Shay was saying too. I think one of the biggest things that people don't realize about the difference between residential and commercial, and since we certainly do a healthy amount of each, we've discovered over the years that people, whether they think about it or not, are truly more aware of their private spaces than sensorily aware of their private spaces, versus say an office or a school where they go there to perform a function. They get their work done. They're kind of distracted by phone calls, video calls, writing reports, or school, obviously educating, teaching, learning, and so on and so forth. Whereas in their home, yes, there's a lot of things for them to do, but they can also just sit there at all hours of the day and night and just relax, just think about their lives, meditate. Meditation obviously has become an interesting thing for a lot of people. So every problem in a home, visually, acoustically, it seems like it's amplified when people are sitting there. I mean, Shay and I can talk about certain clients that we've had in common who are extremely sensorily aware, sensitive in this case to sound, of incredible quietness, and if there are any sounds that occur in their homes, their bedrooms, their living rooms, it'll actually bother them. It'll stress them out, because it's just, some people have more sensitivity to sound, and it just manifests itself so much in their own private environments at 2 a.m. or just in the early evening, wherever it is. So that's why it's even more important to think about those things in homes.
Yeah, and I want to kind of bring this around to kind of one of our other questions, and then that's about materials, right? Shay was talking about hearing different or getting rid of certain sounds, things like the plumbing and things of that nature. How important are the materials that you're using to kind of craft these spaces and craft these auditory environments? And does it lean more towards the function of what the function of the material, or is it more on the aesthetics to get it into the place where you're not seeing it?
Materials, yes. We have seen come to the market a lot of new materials. And I go back to the days when an 2x2 acoustical tile was all you could really do. Or that was the go-to solution, and I think more and more, and Steve, you could say as well, there are products out there that can serve both purposes, that are both aesthetically pleasing and provide the necessary absorption or separation that is needed on an individual space. And so we will guide them, clients, to those and try to integrate them into an architectural element and not just an afterthought or something that we're making disappear. That happens a lot more in commercial projects where you can make a design element out of the ceiling that does the absorption and diffusion, but looks good, and maybe even we tap into their brand and we bring something that the company itself can say, look, this is us and this serves this purpose. So yeah. We did that for the school. We've done that for commercial offices. So it is important, but a lot of the materials that people don't want to see, and we end up having to take steps to conceal those behind fabric, behind, other, methods.
Well, Steve, I'm going to bring you on that part, because when you're working with the architects, at what point are you saying, okay, you know what, I understand this is ugly, right? Or it's not ideal. How about that? Maybe it's not ugly, it's not ideal. How do you walk them through the options, the possibilities when it comes to, hiding those materials? The materials are important, right? Because they serve a function in crafting that audio, that space. But how do you walk them through, how we're going to hide these?
Sure. Well, the first thing is to make any architect, especially one who isn't familiar with acoustic treatments in general, aware of what's out there. Okay, what's available in the different environments. Okay, commercial, a number of treatments are much more appropriate for commercial environments versus residential, and vice versa. Some definitely overlap the two worlds. And that's a great thing. And then more and more, as Shay said, are being developed to address both the high-end residential and the commercial spaces. So that's a good thing. It helps build awareness more quickly throughout the architectural industry. But certainly the first step is just, I like to say it when we were actually in contact with each other, kind of throwing a whole bunch of samples on the table approach to say, okay, here's what's out there. Here's our palette that we have commonly worked with in these types of environments. We're not saying you have to choose A, B, or C. Let's talk about this particular project, the aesthetic character that you're after as an architect or designer. Is it contemporary? Is it classical? And try to at least align a material, like reduce that palette so that your materials are aligned to what the architecture is trying to convey and speak of. And then usually you can find that common ground so that you get that blend, you get something that will blend right in without sticking out, without looking like that science project.
I like that. Guys, as we wrap up here, Shay, I'm going to bring you on this. Is I want to ask a question, sort of kind of future looking, right? How do you see design and architecture and sound design leveraging technology in the future when it comes to both, residential and as well as commercial?
So you're talking about AV technology now?
Yeah,
any sort of
product development that I'm seeing come out where, now suddenly what used to just be a fabric panel on the wall can have texture and color and, and can become part of the interior architecture, the interior design. And I would like to see more of that developed. I don't necessarily know, where that starts. If that starts from, I have an aesthetic problem, I can go to a manufacturer, I can say, this is what we wanted to do, work with them to, develop something specific or a takeoff of something that exists in order to achieve an aesthetic objective that we have that will also satisfy an acoustical requirement that Steve has.
Makes sense. Steve, same kind of question is what do you see coming down the pipeline, or what do you want to see coming down the pipeline as far as technology, whether it's AV technology or it's acoustical technology, materials?
Well, the one thing that, especially in this last couple months, that has just heightened itself so much is the wellness factor.
Okay.
And the wellness factor in residential, commercial spaces, healthcare spaces, I think is an extremely important thing to understand, to know what's going to be our new norm. I mean, it already is. People are talking about the way that we're using our homes have really expanded so much, and it means that there's more activity, and that might not go away, or at least not get back to where its pre-pandemic days were. More people might want to work out of their homes, certainly do entertainment out of their homes, and yet those who have to go back into the real world, they're going to be thinking about ways of that wellness factor, keeping themselves healthy no matter where they are, in public spaces, in schools, in offices, and using technologies, different AV technologies that we've seen, from sensory technologies like circadian lighting and ambient background music and air purification. All those things are combined with the things that we do, certainly, to control noise, which is not nearly talked about enough as a factor in how noise impacts our health. And we promote that quite a bit. And what we talk to clients and designers and others about is just being able to quiet your environments appropriately quiet, not concert hall quiet, but appropriately quiet, so that you're not dealing with those factors that cause stress and health issues. And so that's where I think that blend of AV technology to create that wellness, along with acoustics and certainly the architectural, the space concepts, the lighting, all those things really are coming together. They have been for the last, year, maybe two, with companies like Delos and such paving the way, but certainly with practitioners like Shay and us, we're seeing that more and more. And I believe this pandemic has caused that to really heighten its awareness and be our future of what we're concerned about in the world, our private and public worlds.
Absolutely. And some of that is the fact that most of us have been spending more time at home than we have in the years past, most likely. So yeah, absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you both. So go ahead, Shay.
I am seeing the technology in, systems like Savant and those that they are moving into, circadian lighting, to air purification, to, whole house and wellness, beyond just the acoustics of it. And those are starting to get integrated to one another. And for us, it's really about educating the client. Once we can educate the client and they understand what the benefits of these can be, then we can start to talk about how they can be integrated into them. But educating the larger public and our clients is the first challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, that is going to do it for us. Thank you both so much. Shay Murdoch. Shay is with Murdoch and Salone. How can people find you or Murdoch and Salone?
Well, we're at www.murdochsalone.com. We're based in New York and Portland. We work up and down from Florida, mostly on the East Coast.
All right.
info@murdochsalone.com. You can reach out.
Very good. Mr. Haas, good to see you as always from SH Acoustics. How do people get a hold of you or SH?
Same thing, shacoustics.com. We're on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and certainly you can always email me any comments or questions you have, steve@shacoustics.com.
All right, thanks, Steve. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You'll find this program as well as a host of others, including our 2 weekly programs. One is called Resi Week, looks at the residential side of the AV industry, and the other is AV Week, looks at the commercial side. All that and more at avnation.tv. It's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. That's all the time we have for ArchiTech.